So, what makes a video game sequel? Weird thing to bring up, I know, but the question popped up in my head after the latest Game of the Year nominees were announced. Some of my friends were having a discussion on two particular games, God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West. Two highly anticipated games before their respective releases, now being called expansions. I wanted to have this discussion to see what makes a video game feel like a sequel and not feel like an expansion. But before that, what is a sequel? Well, a sequel defined by Oxford Dictionary is a published broadcast or recording work that continues the story or develops the themes of an early one. So basically, a sequel to a movie or a book just has to develop their story and characters, while also expanding the world they created. Well, then there you go. God of War Ragnarok and Horizon are indeed sequels, by definition. The thing with video games, they have a more difficult hurdle to overcome compared to movies and books. Gameplay, and that's a tricky bit video games have to face. They not only have to develop the story as well as the characters, but also the gameplay feel. So how do you get that balancing act of innovating your system but also feeling familiar to returning players? So I want to highlight two games that I believe can be considered a good sequel and another game that I consider to be an expansion. Now, disclaimer, I love both games, so I'm not speaking on the quality. I'm just using them in this example to show what I believe is a great video game sequel and what I think could just be DLC. And the games that I'm using for this example is Devil May Cry 3 and Bayonetta 3. Let's start with DMC. Devil May Cry 2 to Devil May Cry 3, in my opinion, is what you call a great jump in a video game sequel. It innovates all the problems of the previous games while also building on its foundation. From fixing the combat to having more interesting enemies, map design, and how can we forget that amazing style system, being able to switch from trickster to gunslinger to swordmaster and royal guard. That system alone, that video game alone, changed the landscape for many character action games. And how can we forget the story? Yes, I know it's technically a prequel, but storytelling wise it was still way better than 2, so it should be a point towards DMC. So, with all those factors, I hope I articulated why I believe DMC 3 is one of the greatest sequels in video games history. So, why do I call DMC 3 a sequel, but I call Bayonetta 3 an expansion? Well, so, Bayonetta 3. Now, put your pitchforks down. I'm not saying it's a bad game. Bayo 3 is an amazing game and Bayonetta controls like a dream, just like in Bayonetta 2. But that's the issue. Otherwise, from the Devil Trigger summoning, Bayonetta feels like she could have done all of this in 2 with a DLC expansion. That's mostly due to the limited hardware of the Nintendo Switch, but in the discussion of sequel versus expansion, it doesn't do that much to improve on its base formula. On top of that, in my opinion, the story in Bayonetta 2 is way better. Without going into spoilers, Bayo is more of a passive character that doesn't really interact with other characters other than, well, herself. Again, spoiler. Some of my favorite interactions in Bayo 2 is her interaction with Luca or Baldur. In 3, she's playful, yes, but her character doesn't get to shine just like in previous games. So that's why I think Bayonetta 3 just feels like an expansion of 2. So that begs the question, what if you already perfected your game control? I feel like a lot of games fall into that trap, suffering from success basically. I think that's the reason why genuinely great games get hit with the "oh, this could have been a sequel" argument, because God of War PS4 and Horizon Zero Dawn were genuinely good games with minor flaws, so the sequel to those games would end up feeling the same with minor polishes here and there. unless the developer decides to change the game completely to something almost unrecognizable. Something like the Assassin's Creed franchise. I'm pretty sure there's some kid out there that liked Black Flag and Unity and was instantly turned off by the change up of Origins and the other games, due to it feeling like a completely different genre. So maybe adding new playable characters, but that doesn't really fix the problem, because if you're not a fan of that character, then you're going to end up going back to what you know. Then we're right back to the argument of it's just an expansion. So, how do we find the solution? Honestly, I don't know. I'm just some dude on the internet. But I decided to ask some of my friends some questions in regards to this topic. Now, they won't have the answers and I'm not expecting them to, but I thought it would have been a fun little experiment. Anyway, thank you for watching, and leave in the comments some games that you think are genuinely good sequels, and tell me, how do you think that developers can change up the game so it can feel more like a sequel and not like an extension? Thanks for watching, subscribe for more, and I'll be putting out more videos every Sunday.